the Select podcast. I can't take your call at the moment, but leave a message. And remember, please keep them kind. Cheers.
Hey, Slick, it's Donald. I can't believe I got your answer machine again. You have to check your messages sometimes, I guess, because this is the third time I've called you. Yes, it most certainly is. Call me back. Oh, and keep it groovy. Later.
You have tuned in for a Slick podcast. I'm here to seek the truth. Live from Scotland around the UK. The one and only Slick podcast. Enjoy the show. Can I ask important questions? No matter how bizarre the truth might be. Tune in for Slick Podcast. Keeping it real, keeping it groovy.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or a very good day to you when and wherever you're listening from. And a very warm welcome to the show. I'm your host, Simon Laurie King. Coming up on today's show, my guest is New-Orléans' most renowned and favourite psychic. She is, of course, well known across the United States and has a reputation as one of the most credible psychics and readers across America, whether visiting her practice in New-Orléans or by way of an online consultation. Cari Roy is a third-generation psychic and started displaying her gifts and ability at age just 7 years old. Her grandfather was a master astrologer and numerologist, and her mother was a spiritualist practitioner and clairvoyant. In her early years, Cari attended university and studied comparative religion, psychology, and cultural anthropology. After completing her education, Cari then travelled to England and stayed a good while to study more spiritual practices, and then on to Switzerland, the home of her maternal lineage. After her travels and studying in other disciplines was complete, she came back to her beloved New-Orléans and began her successful career. Over 30 years have passed and Cari has read for thousands of people from all over the world and all walks of life, from housewives, college students, celebrities, CEOs of major corporations, and everyone in between. She has been featured as a lead psychic in several documentaries, including America's Most Terrifying Places, and many other television appearances, a few of them also filmed in New-Orléans. She has appeared twice on the Today Show. She has been a much asked for guest on talk radio shows also. As well as psychic readings and clairvoyance, Cari also helps her clients with past life and death interpretations. I could keep this intro going for a long while yet with all the accolades about Cari. This subject today fascinates me and I'm really looking forward to speaking with her. Oh, and FYI, she just happens to be a really nice person also. Let's not leave that out. So, without further delay, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Cari Roy to the show.
Thank you, Simon. Very happy to be here.
Let's get the ball rolling on this one. You are described as New-Orléans' most accurate and empathic psychic reader and medium. Where, or rather, when did your abilities become apparent? I also read that these gifts are at least 3 generations back in your family.
Yes, they are. My grandfather was an astrologer and a numerologist, and my mother was also a psychic medium. So I come by it honestly, as they say. And I think one of the reasons that my abilities grew is that I was encouraged in that when I was younger. So my first memories of this were when I was around 7 years old of having some of these abilities myself. And then my mother kind of encouraged that in me. So I'm lucky, I feel.
Were you scared at 7 years old what you were seeing, or because you had your grandfather and mother as your mentors, did you just accept that this is what you could do? Maybe could you give us an example of how they manifested at that age?
Sure. Yeah, I was actually very scared. And to my mother's credit, she helped me work with that. But I was scared. My first visual memory of seeing anything was when I was about 7. And we were walking on this street in the French Quarter called Wall Street. And it was in the summer. There was nobody out at that time. It was August or something like that. The streets were very empty. And all of a sudden I had a flash and I felt that I was in a very, very crowded area where I could see all people, and I thought that they were in costume. I thought it was all of a sudden Mardi Gras, and I fainted because it was too overwhelming to me. And my mother, when I started kind of coming out, she was a little freaked out. But when I started describing to her what I was seeing, she understood that. Even though I didn't understand it at the time, she got the gist of it, and so helped me to turn the noise and the visions down a little bit so they weren't as intrusive.
I spoke to Father Jason Bray probably about 2 months ago, and apart from being the vicar of the city of Wrexham, he's also an exorcist. That's only one part of what that's only one part of what he would do. A really nice guy, but he also pointed out that poltergeist activity can be from young people, boys or girls, at around the age of, say, 11 to 14, when they go through the change. So for you, was it like a double whammy, as it was, around that age?
Well, I think, in the States, 11 to 14 years old are really, you come into your own at that point. And I started to have a lot of experiences at that point with prescience, where I knew things that were going to happen before they happened. And so it was, you're a little awkward, 11 to 14 anyway. And so I definitely felt different. I felt as though I had a world that other people couldn't necessarily see. My mother and my grandfather, my mother primarily really encouraged this to blossom, but also tried to help me gain control of it. And I was lucky that my mother never really forced it on me. She never said, this is the path that you must take. She just said, this is what's going on with you, and this is how to live with it. And if you want to do something with that, then these are the steps that you need to take in order to do that without it really diminishing anything in your life. But it was a little weird to grow up and do seances and things like that as a kid, when most kids are playing with Barbies or learning the latest dance craze.
So you were very lucky to have your grandfather and your mother helping you embrace it, rather than maybe if you'd been in a different family, encouraging you to get rid of it and
to suppress it. Yeah.
Right. Have you come across, before we move on, have you come across anybody that has had that problem? So they're of maybe not of your kin, but they're of your ilk, and they're going through this, but they've no one to relate to.
I have a dear friend who grew up Pentecostal in the Deep South. And she is very gifted, and she wasn't even allowed to cut her hair or wear, pants. And so she grew up very, very restricted with this. And she was somewhat ostracized because of that. I'm not the norm. I think a lot of people who have this, I've known several people who have the abilities and grew up in a rather stifling environment. And it hurt them when they were younger. And I can't truly identify with that part of it. I can empathize with that part of it, but I was the opposite. It was something that it was like, great, we're glad that let's have our morning dream interpretation discussion over coffee. I mean, it was very different for me.
I think in a lot of cultures around the world, apart from maybe the Western culture, it would be, not all, but some would revere such gifts. I can't speak for the Pentecostal faith because I have no knowledge of it, but let's say somebody staunchly Christian may look on this as the work of the devil. Would that be right?
Oh, yeah. I got a fellow that writes me. He's been writing me every so often for the last 20 years, who is a minister somewhere in the Midwest of the U.S., and I get emails from him telling me that I'm going to go to hell and I need to repent and all of this stuff. And I do my best not, I don't read it. I know what it is at this point, so I just delete it.
No, that's understandable. And a big shout out to him. If you want to come onto my show, sir, and you want to talk about this, you'll be definitely welcome. Everyone has an opinion, but you've noticed, my listeners, that That gentleman wasn't slated off in any way. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, I suppose. But
Sure.
in this show's opinion, I would just say get over it. But there you go. Anyway, let's move on, Cari. You studied extensively at university, subjects such as comparative religion, psychology, and cultural anthropology. You then travelled to England and lived for a time, then to Switzerland. Was your intense education in academia connected to your travels? As from an outsider's perspective, I compare it with the phrase walkabout or even spiritual pilgrimage. I ask this as it's something I myself has done, but mine was a 4-month horse and wagon trip across this island we call Britain.
That's fabulous. I think we all should do our walkabout. And I was very interested at the time and have maintained that interest in Arthurian legend. And so one of my primary reasons for being in England was to kind of try to find the places that were part of Arthurian legend. And I was kind of chasing Merlin and chasing King Arthur and chasing Morgaine. And took me to many wonderful places. Of course, I was in Glastonbury, which I absolutely loved. I could move there. I love Glastonbury. I think it's a fabulous place. Avesbury, Stonehenge. I went on into Wales, trying to get to Bardsey Isle. And I was I don't know if it was a past life thing, but I really was very interested in the historic basis for the Arthurian legends.
Places like Glastonbury, and also in Cornwall, a place called Tintagel.
Yeah.
It's very much alive. It just has a certain vibration, and it feels really, really good. So you mentioned Avebury as well, which I hold dear to my heart. That's a wonderful place, and it has a stone circle around the village. Yeah. I mean, one of the friends of the show is Jared Murphy, and he's very much about archaeology. And I would agree with him. This isn't just the random placing of stones by people in animal skins. There is a reason. Have you ever thought about what that reason was?
Well, I mean, I think we're all trying to leverage the power of the stars and to kind of help us here on Earth, and we're all celebrating our deities of choice. And I just think that that people come to certain areas because those vibrations are so high, and it's a little bit the chicken or the egg. Is the vibration high because of Avebury, or is Avebury the reason that the vibration there is high? I that's a crazy question, but I think that it could be UFOs for all I know, but I feel like it was just a way to honor the sun, the moon, the stars, and their effect on us and our turns of the wheel of the year. And so I think it was their big festival place.
I think that's a really relevant point as well. Is Avebury powerful because of the stones, or the stones powerful because of Avebury? I would say taking away the houses and the people, the ground. Yeah, I would say that Stonehenge, any holy site, would just be marked. Nothing to do with really the stones. They may have some bearing on it. Forgetting,
significant,
forgetting how they were hauled up there. I've never actually been into that. I can't imagine people say like dragging stones from the Preseli Mountains to Stonehenge, where a lot of the time it would have been marshes, bogs, and forests. I don't think they would have used, logs and stuff like that. I don't know what they've used, but that was a valid point. So let's move on. Tell us, if you wouldn't mind, what the phrases medium and empathic mean. Are they the same thing?
No, they're not. They're variations of the same mechanisms, perhaps. But a medium is somebody who can kind of channel the spirits of people who have passed, connect with them, speak for them, or interpret what they're trying to let those of us that are still here know. Empathic, I believe, is the ability to connect with our fellow humans and to really feel those feelings that others have. As an empath, one feels sad when one is with somebody who is sad. When one is feeling anxious, it may be because they are feeling the anxiety of their fellow, and so they just feel everything. I think every medium should be empathic. I think that everybody should be empathic. I think we're running out of empathy in this world. So I think the more of it we can get, the better. But they are slightly different.
Oh, that was a good answer. Everyone should be more empathic. I know that I'm empathic, not psychic. I'm empathic because where we live, we're in the middle of nowhere. Before that, we were in a caravan in a wood for 10 years. So we've been out of the system maybe 30 years because I can't deal with the whole, let's just say if we went into a room, I would be convinced I know what people are thinking, not the words, the emotions, right? And it makes me very, very uncomfortable sometimes, very uncomfortable. So I would say that it would be empathic. Have I explored that? No, because it's uncomfortable. Before we move on, could you just comment on that?
That exploring is uncomfortable, you mean, or exploring it can be uncomfortable, or I feel
I would say both, Cari. It's something like, I mean, I'm very, very afraid of spiders. In fact, anything with more than 4 legs, fill in the blank. I don't want to embrace that fear, even though I'm a great believer in embrace the things that make us uncomfortable. Done often enough, there will no longer be those things. But I don't have to do that in everything. You know, I don't want to stand on the edge of a cliff, right? So it's the same as this empathic thing. You know, I get it. Let's say I can go into one of the big superstores here and, you know, you just feel, in fact, we had a great example last week. We went to a different village and used a different shop, exactly the same shop as in the company, but it was a different vibe, 100% a different vibe. And myself and Jet, my loving wife, both felt that, just like, no, we can't come back here. And we might go to our local store, have a good vibe where people go, oh, how are you? Or it'd just be Gloomsville. Am I reading too much into this? What do you have to say about that, Cari?
No, I don't think you're reading too much into this at all. I think that we as humans have those mechanisms within us to allow us to navigate the situations we find ourselves in. I believe that empathy is a gift. I believe that it is something that can help you decide, hey, yeah, this is a bad vibe, let me get out of here. And yay, this is a great vibe, let me hang out here. That's discernment, right? It's just discernment with a little bit of an edge.
Right. I get this all of the time. It can't be turned off. So I will go to work and I'll go in the office. It's not a good vibe, or it is a really good vibe. One of the two. I can pull into where I need to. I'm a lorry driver, so I can unload. And again, I could just pick up this. There may be a group of guys standing there. I'm not afraid of them, but I just get this. Yeah. It's just not a good feeling. And I can't turn it off, but I don't want to explore it.
That's a warning device sometimes. I mean, I think that we have this fight or flight system where forces perhaps not normal, but are extra supernatural forces that allow us to feel fear when we are in a situation that it could be questionable. I think that you don't have to dive fully on into it, but I would hope that you listen to those insights that your intuitive ability, your empathic ability are letting you know.
I'll certainly think about that. But like I say, a lot of the time it does make me uncomfortable. It's almost like crossed lines, static on a radio. Doesn't sound like static on the radio. It's just the action of it. Right. Okay, then. Could you give us an idea how you would use your gifts to help your clientele? I'm guessing, well, I know for a fact they are from all walks of life, from all over the world.
I read for everybody. I mean, politicians to party planners to pensioners to psychiatrists. I've read a whole bunch of different people in my career, and we all basically have the same questions. We want to know about our relationships. We want to know about our careers, our life path. We want to know about our family. We all have questions about the future. And somebody like me, when I'm putting my psychic hat on, what I do is I take a look at all of those areas, relationships, career, family, finance, all of that. And I get a gauge of where it's at and where it's going. And so I can help in that way to let somebody know, yeah, this is a great gig for you. You should pursue this job opportunity, or no, you'll feel trapped in 6 months. Don't do that. I don't make the decisions for others, but what I do is I give them a little idea of what would be if they took door number 1, or if they took door number 2 or door number 3. And so that's what I do as a psychic.
So if there was some red flag in somebody's life, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but imminent death, would you try and skate around that, or would you tell them, there's something bad coming, or would you just try and feel that out?
I've had to tell people that some negative things were happening. I don't want to foretell death. I used to have that ability when I was young, and it's something that I worked pretty hard on suppressing that particular part of life, because it's not. I learned through experience and just empathy and compassion that telling somebody that there is an imminent death, unless something can be done about it, is not really a blessing. It can be a curse, because it changes the trajectory of our relationships with others, with ourselves. And so I don't like to be a death predictor. But I have pointed out red flags in people's relationships in their career, things going on with family members. I worked on criminal cases, and some of the things that I've had to tell people are pretty grim. Say if somebody was a missing person, and I determined through my abilities that the person was no longer with us, and that's why they were missing. And so those are things that I've had to share with people that are quite difficult. I wouldn't say I shy away from things like that, but as I've said, I don't think knowing about death a moment before somebody has to, being that death of loved ones is the ultimate pain. I don't know that does somebody good to know that before it's coming. I've had to tell people that people are nearing their time to leave, and so they should spend as much time with them as they possibly can. But I don't want to know that stuff.
No, I can respect that. How about have you ever had anybody come and sit down in front of you, or through a Zoom call, and suddenly you discover they really are quite a nasty person?
Oh, sure.
Right. Okay. Go on. I don't need to ask a question. Carry on with that then.
It's a tough situation, because I dealt with some things that were really kind of creepy. And there was a gentleman once that came to me that I was convinced was a spree killer in the making. And it was an uncomfortable situation. I feel like I was lucky to get out of it alive. I got in contact with somebody that I knew in law enforcement in the area that the guy was from, and I was like, this guy could pop at any minute. And there was nothing, like, they couldn't go pick the guy up, nor would I have wanted them to, but it was just something that I felt really compelled to follow through on, in case there was anything anybody could do about it. And luckily that dissipated, and it ended up not being a bad situation, but it was very, very uncomfortable.
So there was somebody who was cheating on their wife, or somebody who's just generally dishonest, and we will move on, but somebody was just generally dishonest, always trying to find that angle on other people, get what they want. Would you be able to pick that up and just tell them the way it is? Not be judgmental, but obviously remind them of where they are in front of you and what they've asked from you. So you're going to have to tell them what you're picking up.
Yeah. I pretty much know how to call something as it is, and I have read people who were no doubt sociopaths. I've read people. Mostly they don't seek my services. I'm fortunate at that I've not had many people who were without a conscience come and sit across from me, but I've had that happen to me. And yes, I have called it what it is. Perhaps I didn't look at them and said, look, you're a sociopath. I couch it with a little bit more grace to it, but I've had to say to people that I think that you've got something that you need to work on, and this was going to be a problem for you.
Okay, a big question, but relevant nonetheless. There comes a time that we all think, what comes next? The big permanent lie down and our final worrying thoughts of where do I go from here? What do you say about that, Cari?
I think it's pretty awesome over there. I've never seen anybody over there really give it a bad review. Connecting with spirit as in my work as a medium, I feel that what we do in this world is a very good preview of what our experience in the next one is going to be like. If you are a hurtful person, I think that you don't graduate easily. I think you have to come to terms with what you've done. I think if you're a good person who has been a giver in this lifetime, I do believe that you go to a happy place. Now, I think everybody can go to that happy place. I just think we have different roads to get there. And so some of the moral things that you find in organized religion are, some of them are completely overblown, but the idea that what you reap is what you sow, I believe, is very much a part of our afterlife experience. I've had a near-death experience myself, and I can only speak from what my experience was, but I made it along a route that I felt like was taking me someplace, and I was only asked one question, and that is if I was a giver or a taker.
I'm actually got an interview, I think it's next week, with, let me remember his name, Robert Christopher Koops. I'm trying to say it because he's from Holland, and he's written a book on near-death experiences, and it's a really, really good book, and I'm quite ashamed I can't remember what it's called, but it's a really good book. But when you said about everyone can go to that happy place, I really do hope there is a judgment of some sort, because otherwise it would be, what does that Aleister Crowley say? Do what thou will, and that would be no good. You know, that would mean there's no accountability. And there has to be, because there's some wicked people. Yeah, I would agree with that.
There definitely is that accountability. And when I had my personal experience, I was able to answer the question that I was a giver, and then I started crying for the people that couldn't answer it that way, because I thought they were going to have a very different experience than I was.
Well, speaking about those who have passed for the Great Veil, are they able to communicate with you randomly? I mean, will they turn up at a supermarket or a restaurant, for instance? This is meant with respect. There's no tongue-in-cheek, tapping on the shoulder, metaphorically, to warn or contact someone they knew on their behalf that you may be close to, or in the restaurant, or wherever you happen to be. Has that ever happened to you? You just randomly get contact?
It's definitely happened. It was part of my upbringing and training from my mother that she really helped me learn how to turn it off, because if you can't turn it off, then it is so, it'll make you crazy. I think that if I was not taught how to kind of avoid that when I needed time just to be, I think I'd be nuts. I really do. And I think that it shouldn't be that intrusive. It makes real good television to have the medium just walking down the street, dun, 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 and then boom, dead person pops up saying, "You've got to tell my mother this." You know, that is a very good device, but it isn't the way that it should be. It shouldn't be that intrusive. There are times where it will slip through, and I can't block it out completely, but when I'm off, when I am just out with friends and we're having a good time, I try to turn that off. I really do.
Yeah, that says a lot, because a lot of people maybe play on that. Before we move on the same question, would you see the spirit through your eyes, or would you see them through your mind's eye, or would you hear them in your head? I mean, I wouldn't know how it works. Okay.
But I see them in my mind's eye. I don't tend to see them. Apparitions, full-blown apparitions, are rather rare. I see them in my mind's eye. They are ever present. I think we always, at any moment of the day, have someone that is around us in a different dimension watching over us. And so I think that they're there on the regular. And so I think they're always available to us. But I've heard them outside of my mind. I've heard spirit manifest external noises, which is pretty impressive. But usually it's hearing something within my set of hearing, my inner hearing and my inner sight.
We will be right back after this message.
Hello, I'm Alec Morgan from wonderware.com, and I'm here to tell you about the great deals we have going on right now at our online store. Treat yourself to a brand new second-hand mattress from our wide range and condition. Use the promo code SLICKPODCAST23 to get a massive 5% discount on our top brand range of old socks, vests, shoes or boots. And remember, we are also Britain's #1 first-stop shop for used laundered underwear in various styles. Why not visit us at www.wonderwear.com? It's good stuff.
Truly unforgettable topic. This is Sleep Podcast.
About 18 months ago, I think it was 18 months ago, maybe a little bit more. Well, myself and my wife had the duty of, with her family, of course, laying to rest her mother and her father 3 months apart. That's two.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, exactly. That's two eulogies I gave. You know, I'd rather poke myself in the eye. That was so painful. But anyway, getting to the point, when we came home on the last one, we gone to bed, and then Jet woke me up in the morning, and she related the story to me that obviously we were laying in bed together. The dog, Lily, was really nervous, not like growling or anything, but she was backed right up in between us and staring at the door. And I said to Jet, I bet that was either one or both of your parents. It was just like one of those things. I thought that's just too... The timing, that's got to be there. Maybe both standing there and looking, and the dog saw it. But Jet said it woke her up, where Lily was just backed right up between us, you know, between my pillow and Jet's pillow. She was between us looking at something at the door. Yeah, that was bizarre, that.
Animals are very sensitive. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, she didn't growl and she didn't bark, but there's been lots of little things since you may catch something out there. In fact, today, just before I talked to you, I was bringing some logs in, and I was mumbling to myself, as I do, and I was quite embarrassed. I was quite embarrassed because Jet was standing there. Turns out, actually, there was no one there, and I brought the logs in. I just said to Jet, I could have sworn you were standing just behind me as I was doing the logs. I got embarrassed because I was mumbling to myself. And he said, well, I wasn't there, but you should stop mumbling to yourself. And I saw something at the corner of my eye.
They're there. They're there, like I said, pretty much all the time. There is a different dimension that is bumped up against our dimension, and sometimes there's a little bleed through.
Talk to us about past lives and how you would help someone either remember or maybe try and forget, or at least get into some kind of perspective.
The best way to do that is a full-on past life regression, which is done by a hypnotist who should be certified hypnotist, who will bring somebody into that state, that hypnotic state, and then the person can actually see and have recall of those past lives. It usually, you remember it at the point of death, so it can be a little jarring when you first start experiencing past life memory. But for somebody like me, what I do is I give them the things that I'm seeing, the lifetimes that I'm seeing from whenever 1600. I had a woman the other day who was an artist from the 1600s, and she has this block where she's tried to do art her whole life, but has a critique. And it was something that we were able to trace back to that lifetime when she was kind of shunned by her family for picking an artistic path rather than the path of a tradesman. And so that was able to help her gain perspective to a creative block that she's been walking around with. Past life traumas can manifest themselves in this lifetime as a phobia or an anxiety, or you may have been bitten by a snake a spider and died that way, and that's why you have a terrible phobia of spiders in this life.
That would make sense. Have you explored your own past lives?
Yes, I have, actually. And it's interesting because the some of the deaths were rather I was beheaded a couple times in my past lives.
You were beheaded a couple of times.
I was beheaded, yeah, a couple of times, a couple different lifetimes. I was beheaded, and I think it was something that people did there for a while in history. So I was lucky enough to have been hit twice in 2 different lifetimes. Those are not necessarily pleasant memories, but it was an interesting thing that I discovered when experimenting and going back and exploring my past lives.
When you deal with your clientele, do you take all of this into consideration? I'm going to guess some of your clients are just curious. Some of them obviously have real needs, real questions, but some are just curious. Do you take the every tool in your box and work out who I've got sitting in front of me and how I can help them? So you're taking into account, I don't know, would you be able to tell about past lives and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I can do that with a client that's sitting in front of me. And they do come from all walks of lives. And some of them are just curious. They're in New Orleans for a visit, and it's a very New Orleans thing to do to get a reading. And so they'll just pop in as clients because they want to have that experience. And some of them are dealing with deep and profound grief. And I approach each of them with sincerity and seriousness, to be able to connect with them to make this experience a better experience for them. But yeah, you can connect with somebody's past life just by them sitting across from you.
So some people obviously go to see yourself or other spirit workers, for want of a better expression. And I'm guessing, having researched you and read testimonials from your site, and you are absolutely, I'm convinced you're legitimate and of good character. And here's the thing, there are a lot of charlatans out there who make a decent living fleecing people of their money. And also these people are grieving, so they're vulnerable and providing nothing but lies. What is your advice when seeking out guidance from the psychic, whatever their tools of the trade be, whether it be tarot cards or crystals or just plain, I can see you? And I don't mean the body, I mean, I can see you, whatever is looking out your eyes from me, I see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was that too dramatic? Was that too dramatic?
No. That was perfect, Simon. That was great. You're great at this. Thank you for asking really deep and interesting questions and thoughtful questions. I appreciate that. There are a lot of charlatans. It is unfortunate. I clean up a lot of messes where I'll have a client come in and see me and they were fleeced for, thousands of dollars with somebody. The first thing is, if somebody tells you you have a curse on you, get up and leave the reading. That is the biggest setup. Their person is going to say you have a curse on you, and then they are going to tell you that for a certain amount of money, they can take that curse off of you. It is a hustle. It's reprehensible that people do that, but I see this play out over and over and over again with people coming to me after somebody has taken them to the cleaners in that way. And the common denominator is they tell you that you have a curse. They put a fear in you. And so if you're sitting down with a psychic or a medium or whoever is really there to hopefully help you, and they start going very negative, walk away. Just get up and leave. Don't even pay them. Just get up and leave. Because if they're just trying to set somebody up for a fall. They're creating an itch so you'll scratch it. And it's terrible. It really is. But they all start with, you've got a curse over you.
And I'm guessing some people that would seek out your services need guidance and probably are lonely people and at their wits' end. Would that be a fair assumption?
I would say that probably is about 20% of the people. Yeah.
Your other clientele, obviously some are going to be curious. Would they go, because I know for a fact that you dealt with CEOs and
Yeah.
Well, celebrities, for want of a better word,
Yeah.
would they use you as a tool in their box for their betterment, their careers? I mean, I have spoken to, I would say, probably two legitimate, where I absolutely could not doubt their legitimacy, psychics. Yes. And one told me that I'd be living on a desert island and also have a horse and wagon. We were living in caravan at the time, and I didn't go on holiday abroad. I'd much rather be in this country. So I just laughed. Yeah, okay then. Well, 8 months later, I was in the Maldives. Didn't cost me a penny. I was living on a desert island. And then a year later, I traveled Britain with a horse and wagon. There's no way. I didn't even know that, let alone this good woman, Bren, could have known that. That was a completely ice bucket challenge. Wake up and smell the coffee. This is real. That was absolutely 100% real. And that's the sort of thing that's really, really hard. I include you in this, legitimate, but to find that is very, very difficult. Very difficult.
It is. There are so many things that you've got to do to, that you've got to do your due diligence. I've been doing readings in New Orleans for almost 40 years. I've been in the same city for the same amount. I mean, for a long period of time. You want a reader who is not a transient. You want somebody who has a track record where they are. You want somebody that has some real estate on the internet, because if they don't, that means they haven't been doing it long enough.
And reference to the CEO, because I kind of rambled on there a little bit, would they use you as a tool in the box, thinking, I need to go back to Cari and ask her about this? Maybe expansion of our company. Do you get that?
Oh, sure do. Yeah, I sure do. The way I started doing phone readings in the 1980s is that I had a client who was a businessman who did things overseas, and he wanted to know if I could do what I did by phone. And I said, sure, I'll give it a try. And that's how I started phone readings, because of this particular businessman who needed really timely answers to deals that he was making. And I enjoy doing that. That's a fun part of it, actually, is being able to feel the thrill of a person making those kind of deals. It's really enjoyable to do that kind of work.
What's the other sort of subject that people bring up? Obviously, it's love and relationships and that love. Sort of thing. Yeah, right. Carry on then.
Love is the number one question. It's been that way for as long as I've been doing this. It is am I going to meet somebody? Is the person that I've met the one for me? Most of it is, everybody is curious about relationships, which is, I think that's a nice thing about us humans. The next thing is career. The next thing is family. If there's any turmoil, mothers wanting to know about their kids, fathers wanting to know about their kids, kids wanting to know about their parents and their siblings. And so those are a lot of the things people come to me. A lot of people come because they have unresolved grief. They have lost a loved one. And the grief can be, I could get somebody who's lost somebody 6 weeks ago, or get somebody who's lost somebody 60 years ago, and they can still be stuck in that grief. And so I try my best to connect them with those people so that they can know that they're still present for them. But it's a lot of different things. It's a whole bunch of different questions that people come in with.
I can relate to grief, obviously, recently for my wife and myself, which is no longer a stranger, I suppose, from the age of 26, 27, when she first knocked on our door. And then we've lost friends and family. So, yeah, I can relate to that grief, but I'm very lucky, and I like to think Jet's very lucky that we can talk it out. We don't understand when death calls. You know, she comes when she chooses, but it's good to be able to talk it out. I know for a fact talking to you would really help people that just cannot get their head around what would be the question? Why?
Yeah, why? It's not fair. The questions are, do they know that I loved them? Did I do enough for the person? Those are a lot of the questions that you get asked. We humans are a good lot. I really do believe that we are. And the question that I get most often is, did I do enough for them while they were here? Which I think is a very, very touching question.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And how do you deal with some of your clients which are in so much distress? Again, to the empathic part, talking to Jet, and that it affects me. Of course, I'm 100% there, but also with other people. If you're dealing with it day after day, I had the same question to Father Jason Bray as well. How do you disassociate yourself with that at the end of the day? What's the best way? If I get the words wrong, Cari, forgive me. How do you clean yourself after that? Obviously, you have to be there for the person, but you can't take that on board day after day, surely.
Well, one of the things that my mother taught me is that it's not my right to take on somebody else's experience. I have my own experiences. And so I can honor somebody's experience. I can join them in their journey in that experience, but it's not my right to take that on personally. It really isn't. And I get that. I truly do. I think that it's not about me when I'm doing a reading. It's about the person. It's about their journey. It's about their experience. And so I am there because I apparently have the ability to hold space for people and comfort them and help them through extremely trying times. I feel it. There are nights where I go home and I don't want to speak to anybody. I just want to go to sleep because it's been a particularly sad day, where I may have read for a mother who's lost her children to drug addictions. I may have worked on a missing persons case. The end of those days, I go to sleep. I can't deal with it. And then I wake up and I start the whole thing all over again. But I know at this stage of my professional career how to let that go.
I appreciate you understanding my question. I know I've rambled a bit, but I was just genuinely curious, like yourself or Father Jason, how you would disassociate yourself be a fair way, not in a cold, callous way, but you have to, don't you? You would surely have to disassociate yourself once the client had gone. Doesn't mean you don't give a crap anymore. It just means you can't take that on board personally. Is that right?
Yeah. It may be disassociated. It may be just that what I'm doing is that I'm spending so much of my attention being present for that person. I'm using all of my conscious ability to hold space, to assist them, that again, it becomes that it's not about me. I can step out of my feelings. I can step out of not really, because I use my feelings in readings, but I don't have to take that on. It's about me being there for somebody else. And I think that there are folks like me who can do this. It's a calling, I feel. And I think that I've been equipped for that calling.
Yeah, that would make sense, because otherwise it would cloud your judgment for everything else, wouldn't it? Your other readings and everything.
Yeah.
So when you've appeared on television quite a lot of the times, and one of them was it America's Most Terrifying Places or Haunted Places?
Yes.
So when you're asked to do these, because I know for a fact that that you have your morals and standards, but before we get into the show itself, do you have any caveats before, if somebody was to approach you, say, look, I've got this really haunted mansion. I know you know where this is going. We're going to say it anyway. I've got this great haunted mansion. It's got a morgue and everything. Come down, see what you can pick up. Do you have anything you say to them before you agree to anything? Do you have your own caveats?
Well, it really, I take those as opportunities, and I try to be a say yes person in this life. Luckily, I have not been asked to do anything that was too unusual or too what's the word that I'm looking for? Too exploitive. I don't like to do exploitive shows. Like, I've been asked to do some shows where I would be dealing with a murder case or something like that. I think that's exploitive to the people who have experienced that grief. And so I don't particularly want to do that. I feel like let the families just live the rest of their lives without having this continually stirred up. But most locations, again, I've been very fortunate that people have asked me to come into places that are really interesting.
Have you been frightened when you first gone in there?
Not really that much. I mean, there are things that I'm afraid of. I don't like heights particularly, and those scare me. I have certain areas of town that I wouldn't want to go walking around at night. That stuff scares me. But going into a haunted location doesn't scare me as much, because in the way that I was raised with this is my dimension. They're in a different dimension, so they can't really come in here and manipulate this dimension that much. So I'm not as afraid of them as I would be being on Bourbon Street, perhaps at 8:00 at night.
What is it about that street that
Bourbon Street? Well, Bourbon Street is just a little, it's kind of like Blackpool, I guess would be the best way that I could describe it, except it's not a boardwalk, but it's rowdy.
Oh, so it's the living that would concern you.
It's the living that would worry me. Yeah,
that's always a problem. Yeah. That is always a problem. Well, you and I can't do a program on the haunted tower because of your fear of heights and mine of spiders, because there'll probably be spiders there. I couldn't back you up on that one.
that would be true. Yeah, I was asked to do a bridge once out in Sacramento. I was asked to do a program on this bridge, and I had to turn it down because it was too high.
So when you could you just give us an example before we move on one of your television shows where you went, and maybe what was discovered through the those who used to be there that turned up? Maybe I'm trying to think of a better way to say it. Made their appearance known.
Sure. I've done a lot of stuff in New Orleans. We are known as being the U.S.'s most haunted city. And so I've done paranormal investigations in most of our most well-known haunted locations. There is a place that I recently went to called Tableau, which is a restaurant here that is housed in what used to be a theater. It's still partially a theater, but the rest of it has now been turned into a restaurant. And I did that paranormal investigation 30 years ago into just the theater when it was there. And I returned 30 years later, and the spirits remembered who I was. There was one of them that actually said my name, said Miss Roy.
What has been the most sensational happening when you've done TV, or maybe it was a local psychic group visiting somewhere like that? Or something you could call to mind that was quite profound, that shocked maybe everybody?
Well, thermal cams are kind of interesting. The thermal cameras, I've had some interesting things happen on the thermal cam. I was in a television studio out in LA, and it was where the actor Bob Crane, we connected, of all people, the late actor Bob Crane, who was on Hogan's Heroes. And so we were connecting with this spirit, and there was a lot of scandal about him after he passed. He apparently was a little risque in his life choices. And so we were sitting there, and I had a pair of slacks on. And all of a sudden we were connecting with him, and two handprints appeared on my inner thighs.
Oh,
creepy.
That's yeah, creepy, very creepy.
Yeah, and you could see it on the thermal cam, and I was just sitting in that chair all by myself, and then boom, there are these two handprints on my inner thighs.
Was the scandal along that line?
Yes.
Oh no, no. There was a film. It came out. No, we haven't got television. That got thrown out the door 8 years ago. But there was a film in the 80s called, I'm sure it was called Entity, and it was about a famous singer, yes. And it was a true story. Do you know the film I'm talking about?
I do. It's a scary film. It really is.
Can you quickly outline it? Because I'm just going to babble up. Just kind of outline what it's about.
It was a woman who has an entity that follows her around that's quite vicious, and it was apparently studied in, I want to say it was Berkeley. It was UC Berkeley where they studied this spirit. They of course made the movie a lot scarier than the story was in real life, but they sensationalized it some. But it was that this woman was never able to get rid of that entity, and it followed her to every place that she went.
And in the film, it basically had its way, or tried to have its way, with the young lady, didn't it?
It did.
The spirit.
Yeah, it sure did.
Yeah, that was horrible. Have you had to face, I'm sure you have, but have you had to face any doubters that basically, just for the want of causing trouble, just want to call you out, just want to, doubt your abilities?
I have, and that's okay. I really think that's fine. I don't have a problem with people not believing me. I'm not a proselytizer. I believe what I believe by my personal experiences, and if I can wake up that interest in somebody else, that's great. But if they don't have the interest, that's fine. I'm not here to make them believe in things that they don't want to believe in, and it doesn't necessarily matter how much proof you give to some people. They just are going to say no. And that's okay. They have a right to that. But in the world that I live in, these are the things that happen. And this is my experience. And I've shared my abilities with a number of different people, even in academic settings. And there are a lot of things that just can't be explained. And I also, when I'm dealing with somebody that is really very skeptical about it, I ask them, what have they read about the subject recently? Because there have been a lot of things that are out there, some really good research. There's a place called the Institute of Noetic Sciences, or IONS. And I can't really be a member of them. They can study me, but I can't join them because I'm not a lettered academic with an affiliation to a university. They're really stringent in their research scientists. And they've got a lot of stuff about channeling. They have a lot of stuff about remote healing. They have a lot of stuff about psychic phenomenon that is in support of this. So I feel if somebody really wants to sit down and, have a wrestling match with me about this, all I ask is for them to do a little reading prior to that. And let's see about some of the science that's actually supporting this now.
And it's like anything in life, young Cari. There's wheat from the chaff, isn't there? For every good garage that will service your car properly, there'll be another garage that won't and will charge you for stuff they haven't done. Wheat from the chaff.
I agree.
So along those lines, how does Cari see the world today? When she sits and thinks about society, what does she see?
We got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of work to do.
You think? Really?
Yeah. We got a lot of work to do. It really is so much division right now. And I think perhaps it's because there are so many people and everybody feels that they have a right to their opinions, and all of that goes on. But I think we shouldn't be fighting anymore. I think we've really been here long enough that we should stop that. I'm still hopeful, though. I do hope for humanity, and I do believe in our highest good. And so I feel that science is making a lot of breakthroughs that could help the way that we live. For everybody, the wheat from the chaff, for everybody out there who is stirring up trouble and division, there's somebody out there trying to build bridges and understanding. And so I think that we've got a fighting chance here. It's just we have to keep stepping up individually and collectively to not destroy this place.
Are you a religious person? You don't have to answer that. It's a personal question.
No, that's fine. I'm not a religious person. I would say that I'm a very spiritual person.
Oh, that's spot on. Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
No, that's quite all right. I have studied comparative religions, and I, respect every religion and can see a lot of commonalities between them. But I think religious, organized religions at this point aren't really working for us. So I think it's really shifting to people becoming more spiritual and more self-evolved.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned, because I think the underpinning is faith in whatever you believe, and as not as in you, as in them, and me as well. Whatever we believe must have to be faith. There's the spiritual side of things. So whatever looks out from behind our eyes, the reality of it, regardless of doctrine, whatever religion that's from, it all boils down to spirituality, or the spirit as in the entity, and having faith, doing the right thing. And if we are thinking that we're being looked and judged, we shouldn't be worried about that, as long as we believe we're doing the right thing. What would you say about before we move on?
I think that that's the way it is. I mean, the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I think that is a great tenet, and that it is moving towards that we have to be responsible for our own actions. We don't get a pass because I'm this religion or that religion, or it's everybody has to have that faith and act in accordance with, let's make this place a better place than it was when we found it.
Here. Because at the end of the day, we have a choice. I don't think that politics of people kind, whether it be wars or great acts of mercy, have any bearing through the Great Veil. I believe maybe it's looked upon but has no relevance. I think it's individuality, whether you're a king or a queen, a pauper or a butcher or a candlestick maker, whatever the above. I think you're judged on your individuality, how you lived your life, whether you suddenly get this clear vision, last breath before you pass through the Great Veil, or you've always throughout your life tried to do the right thing. I think that's what's relevant. I think that's what's important. What do you think about that?
I agree. Yeah, that's why when I did have my near-death experience, it was very simple. Are you a giver or are you a taker? And that's all that it's about, I think, is that, do you try to make the world a better place? Do you try to make people happier? And do you try to connect with others from a loving space, or are you somebody out there trying to screw people? It's we all have that choice every day.
Because it's not cool to be kind, and that's a fact. As far as I'm concerned, it's not cool. There's no, I can't relate to television, but on the YouTube videos I watch or something like that, it's not cool to be kind. There are kind acts of kindness out there, 100%. But it just seems to me a very selfish world with shiny objects, and you must get this and you must get that. It's all about how much you can earn. But doing the right thing, unfortunately, in this world, there's no profit in it. So it's not done. Not to say there isn't people doing the right thing. I try and count myself among those. But generally in society, and I only look out my window, metaphorically, to see no argument against that statement.
Yes.
We, as a species, we should be so much more than we are today.
I agree. I completely agree. And I'm still hopeful that we'll get there, but we do have a ways to go.
Yeah, no, I amen to that. I hope so. I 100% hope so. My conscience is clear. I'm not perfect. You can probably pick that up. I'm not perfect, but I'm certainly not the worst person on this earth walk of mine.
Oh, no, anyway, you're lovely, Simon. You really are. I can tell.
Really, thank you.
I can tell that you have a very, very kind and bright spirit.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. I'm working on it. I'm working on it since I always took my first breath and cried. I don't know if it was a memory from how I died or from what I left behind, but as soon as I got myself together, yeah, I've tried my best. Can you, before we get to the last question, could you maybe, if you want, it's a very personal experience, expand on your near-death experience? If you don't want to, I'll understand, but I found it fascinating.
Yeah, it was after Katrina. It wasn't related to Katrina, but it was shortly after Katrina, and I was evacuated somewhere outside of New Orleans, and I was going through a health crisis, and I went through what was a near-death experience, and my consciousness left, and I went somewhere else, and where I felt I was what felt like a sorting area where there were other spirits, and kind of like when you go and are going to board a plane, there were not ticket agents, but there were definitely other presence there. And I heard this big, this is an important thing, is when the experience itself was happening and I was losing consciousness, I was crying because I was so grateful for everything that I experienced here. And I did have that moment where my life flashed before my eyes. And it left me with such a sense of awe and gratitude, even things that were painful to me. I looked at like I was the luckiest person in the world to be able to experience it. I knew without question this whole thing was a big gift, and that I should never, ever, doubt that every moment that I am alive is a beautiful, beautiful blessing to me to enjoy and to make the world a better place. And so I knew that. And then I got to this place that was like a sorting area. And that's when I heard a voice, and it was almost like something out of Monty Python, where I just heard this disembodied voice, booming voice. And it said, "Cari Roy, are you a giver or a taker?" And I was like, oh crap, this is this is it, isn't it? This is the whole shebang. I'm here, aren't I? And I said that I wasn't perfect, but I was definitely more of a giver than a taker. And so I would be able to say I was a giver. And then I started weeping for the people that could not answer that question that way, because I knew that there were people that I loved who wouldn't be able to answer the question that way, who still were working on their moral strength in this world. And I thought, wow, I'm not going to see them for a long time. And I started crying because they weren't going to go to what I call the happy place. And it dawned on me that one of the reasons that it's a happy place is that people who hurt you can't get in there.
That's good to know. That there must be a form of accountability if we have this earth walk. I'd like to see karma. That's the thing. Karma, the trouble with karma, it's a great thing. She unfurls her wings and she strikes mercilessly. We don't get to see that. But I am absolutely convinced 100% karma's an actual thing. And I'm really glad there's accountability through people, because if there wasn't, then people, again, back to Aleister Crowley, not that I'm a follower of his, but it's just one of those things that people all know, do what thou will. No, that's not all right to do that. So I'm
not
really
in a
glad.
Society, not when you're living in a society. If you're living by yourself, then maybe do what thou wilt, but if you are in a social, if you're trying to live with others, there has to be a sense of, the thou shalt nots.
Oh, I agree with that. No, that's really good. So when you were at this place, so it wasn't the happy place, it was just before, and you were being...
It was right before, and then I got brought back. Then I came back, and I have never really been the same since then. It was that profound an experience, and it's coming on about 20 years now. Since then, this coming year is going to be, I believe, our 20th anniversary of Katrina. And it's been quite a while since that happened, but it's never left me. And
so that experience, that experience, was it affirming to what you'd already knew, or was it, well, I already knew that, well, it's really great, but I already knew that, or was it, because by the sounds of it, it was a massive affirmation, wow, I was right, or what mum and grandpa and what I've worked towards, spot on?
I think that it really was an affirmation of that. It truly was. It was a little surprising to me that it was that cut and dry, and that was it, because here we try to figure out, the meaning of life, and we've been trying to figure it out for such a long time, and that it all boils down to, are you a giver or a taker? I thought that was it was surprisingly simple. It really was. It's like, that's it, man. That's the meaning of life. You're either here to make it a better place, or you're a destroyer, and that it's that cut and dry.
Because I think the meaning of life can be taken two ways. As far as I'm concerned, it's not to learn about that answer, the meaning of life. It's inherent in our, air quotes, heart. We know right from wrong. And as far as I'm concerned, I've always known the meaning of life, and that's one word: happiness. That's all. Yeah, happiness. It goes to everything, every living thing, animals, everything that swims and walks and flies in the sky, and our interaction with other people. It's just about happiness. I don't want to, and I'm not trying to insult anybody here, try and work out the meaning of life, what comes next after we pass through that great veil, what was previous. You know, it's all about the now, because tomorrow will never come. Yesterday, well, too bad, it's already got this right this minute, right this second. And we're talking to you, I'm extremely happy. What do you say about that?
Yay. Well, I'm happy to be able to share that, because it made me happy as well, you know, and I do share that experience with others. And it seems to have brought others happiness who I was able to share that with. And that makes me feel great.
Last question then, before we wrap up. In nature, absolutely nothing is wasted. The same then can be said of dreams. I try to take note of mine and act accordingly sometimes, if I can remember, and that is, if, as I suspect, dreams are not just a random nonsense from our last meal, which some of them may be influenced by, what can we do to benefit from them?
Well, listen to them, pay attention to them, give them the respect they deserve. It is part of our thought process, and some of it can be that we're visited by spirits in a dream. Other things can be that we actually experience events before they've happened here. We can have precognitive dreams. Most of it is just symbolism for situations that we're experiencing. And I think we do work things out in the dream state. I suggest to people to keep a little notebook by the bedside. And when you have a particularly intense dream, take a minute and write it down. You will get answers about things in your dreams about your waking life.
So they're not just random thoughts, like I've stated. There's nothing in nature is wasted. It's just for us to understand what our higher self or outer influence is. Can we explore that, Quilly?
Well, I think that there are some dreams that are just regurgitations of what's happened in the daytime. When we're particularly stressed, we may just experience it a lot and continue that stress in our sleeping life. But I think that a lot of it is to help us see what areas maybe need attention in our life. I think that we can have dreams that symbolically say, okay, Cari, you've got a lot of feelings that you're not processing in a healthy way. So why not pay attention to this and work on this area a little bit? But then others are just, you know, the anxiety dream of mine was always getting pushed on stage to play an upright bass. That was my anxiety dream. Others are that they're standing in front of a classroom naked, or that's just your mind letting you know that you're anxious about something in your waking life. But we even should pay attention to those.
Could some be a bleed through of another place and another time? Like other people I've talked to about dreams, I've seen people, I'm pretty much convinced I've never, ever, ever met. Some people of extreme beauty. Some people fill me with absolute fear and dread. Places I've never visited to, but I can't quite recall where, whom, and why. Do you think there could be a bleed through, or is that just?
I think there is a bleed through. No, I think there is a bleed through. I have that quite a lot. There are places that I go to the same location again and again and again, and I don't know anybody in these dreams. Nobody, and they're densely populated, like so populated. And they're nobody that I've known in waking life. I mean, they're in depth and they're very detailed. I mean, I can be in cities. I can tell you what it feels like, what the ground feels like. I can see the reflection in a puddle of water in a dream, just as though it was waking life. But when I do wake up, it becomes a little foggy. But when I'm actually dreaming it, I'm aware that I'm dreaming.
Now, before we wrap up, I'm guessing the listeners may be thinking, why haven't you asked anything about yourself? Well, I absolutely intend to, but that will be off air at a private consultation, because it is just that. It's private.
Yes.
I will be doing that. And to be honest with you, I don't want to hang out the dirty washing. There is no skeletons in the cupboard, my dear listeners. But if yourself are going to, and I would recommend it, contact Cari. Keep it to yourselves and Cari, whatever comes through is your business. That's why I haven't asked. And that's us at the top of the hour, Cari, and I've really appreciated and enjoyed the time you've given us today. Please tell us where we can reach out online to find you and learn more about the fascinating work you do and the services you offer.
Well, thank you so much, Simon. I'm easy to find. I'm here in New Orleans. My website is nuorleanspsychic.com. That's all one word, nuorleanspsychic.com. And that has all of the info. Easy to find.
Cari Roy, thank you.
Thank you, Simon. It's been my joy.
And that was the Cari Roy interview. Right off the bat then, I can tell you, not only did I really enjoy this conversation, but had the very real feeling that was being watched. No, really. I've only ever done one video cast, and that was with the legend that is Will Lord. I always keep my camera off, and that of my guests, as I believe it allows our imagination, just like a good book, to create the necessary images in our mind. But I really felt I was being observed. Not in a creepy way, let's be clear on that, but being observed nonetheless. So, back to my point I made at the end of our conversation here today, aka not asking Cari for an observation about my personal life. I have too much respect for her to have turned our conversation into a dog and pony show that I believe would have been disrespectful. I can also tell you that having slept on it for 10 hours after our interview, and it now being 0300 in the morning as I write this outro, my dreams that I've just woken from were very profound and powerful. Why the hell are you up at silly o'clock in the morning, I hear you ask? Well, I'm working tonight, so I'm resetting my body clock, or circadian rhythm if you will. I'll go back to bed at 0700 and get up in the afternoon, ready for night work, or at least that's the theory. Anyway, back to my point. Without going into too many details, they, my dreams that is, were very uncomfortable, and the symbolism that stood out were my brother, who just happens to be a really nice guy and a proper gentleman, was in fact, in the dream, drunk and boisterous. There was a submarine that I was trying to get off, and number 28 was emphasised. This woke me up, which was handy because I needed to pee. Too much info? Anywho, after then going back to sleep, another dream and the number 28 again made itself known. In one of those can't possibly describe dream type experiences. I share this because as I write about these nighttime visions, they were of such strength and are still yet rolling around my bemused mind. Just saying. I'll definitely book a reading. No, I'm going to call it a consultation with Cari, as there are questions I have concerning my future. Example, should I be spending as much time podcasting? Is there a way I can turn my efforts into doing so to my advantage? Will I always be working night shifts, or is there another way? These two are amongst probably 4 questions I have, the other 2 being of such personal nature that I'm sure you understand that I cannot voice them here. Oh, and I mentioned my next guest coming up shortly, Robert Christopher Coops. His book title is Impressions of Near-Death Experiences. And when Robert comes in, we will be discussing his book in depth. That is definitely one to look forward to. Cari also mentioned that although she has studied religion at university, she was not religious. This is an important point because she emphasised the importance of the spirit world and our accountability in this one. I have met many people that would tell you they are not religious, but having interacted with them, I could tell they understood that there is something much, much bigger than themselves, and the acceptance that it is the mechanism that begins and ends all things. The great all and everything that defines our human understanding, but needs no ceremony or head gal or guy to speak for them on this plane of existence. These are people that are spiritual, whether they voice it or not, and need nothing else. And not forgetting, I've had the privilege of speaking to people of different denominations of religious doctrine from all walks of life that are completely devout in their religious beliefs. Again, wonderful people that absolutely try to do the right thing. In my opinion, what matters is the inner voice that compels a person to do the right thing, regardless of peer pressure or consequences. It doesn't matter where someone is coming from, as far as I'm concerned. It's just where they're at. After all, the right thing is just that, and we should never shirk away from the responsibility about doing it. If you'd like to reach out to Cari, I just know she'd love to hear from you. Click on the link below. Again, I'd like to thank Cari for her time today, as she is a very busy woman but kindly took that time out of her day to be with us. I'd like, of course, to thank you, my dear listeners, for attending this cast also. If you enjoyed the show, give it a like or leave a comment below, or send the show an email, the slkpodcast@gmail.com. But either way, please, keep them kind. You can find the Simon Laurie King podcast on all the usual platforms, including YouTube, Facebook, Apple, Buzzsprout, etc. And so, my friends, it's time for me to go. Until next time, stay safe, be happy, and certainly not afraid. Bye.
Slick Podcast. Keeping it real. And always keeping it groovy.